Hey, Judy. Hey, Judy who here, trauma therapist turned boundary coach. I wanted to process the news of this 11-year-old child in Texas who completed suicide. I don't care, TikTok, if you're going to charge me for using that word. I am going to talk a while about what's happening. So, as a boundary coach, I use the nervous system to understand what's happening, and I help people connect to their ancestry, their trauma within their ancestry, so they can clear it out, so they can actually live their best life guilt-free because they are processing all of the things that brought them to this moment in time. Okay? So why am I jumping on live to talk about what happened to this 11-year-old child who was in the 6th grade in Texas, who was relentlessly bullied by classmates in Texas? As I was looking at the information, it was so relentless that the child who was being bullied was being seen by a school counselor. Okay? So what I do with the people that I work with is I zoom out to look at the dynamic, and then I zoom back in. And one of the reasons why I zoom out is because it gives your body time to process this information, because it's really overwhelming, especially because it's relentless, okay? So when I was looking at the article, it was saying that she had been bullied by students at the school relentlessly, threatening to call immigration so that her parent would be detained and deported and that she would be left here on her own. Zoom out. As human beings, we are social creatures. To be left at that age without a parent means death. And what we've seen in this glorious United States of America is that many people are okay with this. And when okay with this, we are all so dissociated from what it means to be a human being on this planet that we are in some ways okay with what is happening, okay? Zoom back into this child. These are experiences that are happening in class all of the time. And what does the school do? Not inform the family of what's happening. Apparently not hold accountable the kids that are bullying this child. And instead providing supports to the child to learn to tolerate this behavior from her peers, which appears to be okay with the school administration. Okay? So zoom out for a second. I am raising my voice because my child was bullied when she was in school for her attractiveness and not wanting to be a romantic partner to another child in kindergarten, okay? And I watched the administration of that elementary school that was very diverse, that the principal was amazing, but there was no accountability against this child, this male child, that was threatening harm on my kid, okay? Profanity on the playground, following her into the bathroom, trying to kiss her, spitting on her hand, all of these things, right? Instead, what the administration did was just ignore. We'll keep them separate, right? All of these behaviors that the administration, the leadership of the school was basically communicating to the body of my child. Let's help you figure out resources or tools to help you manage and tolerate what is happening, right? So basically, I watched my child, who was 5 at the time, right, deteriorate, completely go into anxiety the moment she would get close to the school ground, okay? As a trauma therapist, trying to figure out what's going on, right, while holding everyone else in their beauty as a human being, I understood that the impact of patriarchy meant that the people who were in power, which were all liberal women, lovely, and have learned to tolerate this unacceptable behavior from the male body. Okay? I could see during the pandemic when people were bullying my other child about, all Chinese people have coronavirus, right? The socio-emotional learning that they received was, what are the skills that you can use to calm your body if someone hits you, right? Or you feel an X particular way because another classmate's disrespectful to you. Basically teaching our kids to learn to tolerate this abuse. So the teachers could do their job, which is instruct the kids, okay? Which is not instruction, because if the kids cannot feel safe in the classroom, there's no fucking learning that's going to be happening, okay? There's none. Okay, zoom out for a second. I'm so irritated, okay? If these Alcenstrals, I'm on the New England area, if these Alcenstrals, oh, so nice, Alcenstrals, nice cover for prepare yourself if someone comes in with a gun. If these kids are being taught what to do when there's someone who comes who is intentionally trying to harm you, they're basically saying to these kids, we cannot protect you. Why don't we learn to huddle in a corner and be very, very, very quiet? Okay, zoom out. What's happening in your body as you're imagining yourself at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to your current life, not knowing if you can go anywhere and be okay? So in my body, it's like this tension in my back. So the back muscles, right? If you have a lot of tension or back aches, it's likely because you're constantly protecting yourself, right? So the back is the only protection of the organs in the back, right? So if you have a very tight back, you're likely carrying a lot of stress. What's interesting to note is these adaptations of the body start from somewhere, not just this fucking current life. Okay, can we just stop looking at this little thing and just zoom out for a second, okay? Have we lived in a moment of peace and solitude and abundance for everyone? Ever? No, okay? So if we zoom out and look, my family of origin, where did I get this level of stress? Okay, now I'm going to go back to the 11-year-old and then I'm going to tell a little story about myself and then I'm going to connect it, okay? As I share information about me, this is a mirror for you. Do not look at this like it's some kind of fucking entertainment. I am trying to do a service here. And so the service is I'm going to use my nervous system and my clinical knowledge and the way that I do ancestral alchemy with people so that you can fucking start doing some work and feel better, okay? I'm sorry, I'm very riled up. So when I woke up and I learned about this 11-year-old took her life to just stop the bullying, I flashed back to myself at age 8. It was my first attempt. I took a bottle of Tylenol because basically the level of stress that my parents were under, they were immigrants in a very white town. The stress that they were under was so palpable in my body, right? I could feel their stress. One of my parents took their stress out on my body, blaming me for the circumstances that they were in, whereas it was actually because she was of a particular gender and poverty level when she was a child that she was forced to marry my father, okay? So rather than hold accountable her parent who forced this marriage within the system that made it have to happen, right? If you are impoverished, if you're a woman back at that time, you had no choices, right? It's basically get married or figure out how to make money, which was very hard. Okay, it's still very hard. My parent being forced into this marriage, having a child that was my body, not having any understanding about emotional or psychological boundaries, I just took it on, right? As an 8-year-old, I was the source of my parents' dissatisfaction, right? This sense of being trapped in the life that she didn't choose to live, okay? Thankfully, that attempt at age 8 with a bottle of Tylenol did not work. I remember waking up the next day and just so tired and groggy and completely disappointed that the one extra pill that I wasn't supposed to take didn't do the job, right? Only now, as I've changed the way that I work with my clients, instead of doing therapy how I was trained and doing more ancestral alchemy when the boundary healing that I'm doing, only now, right? I just turned 50 this year. Do I understand the societal structure that made this life possible? Okay, so zooming out for a second. Within the oppressive systems of patriarchy, capitalism, and white body fucking supremacy, my parent was forced to live in a particular way that made her miserable. That lack of power, that lack of agency, that lack of being seen by the surrounding area as valuable and special and worthy, rather than hold the system accountable, she displaced that rage onto my body. And as a child with no emotional boundaries, because we're not supposed to have them yet, I absorbed it as truth. Intimate relationships were unsafe. The world doesn't want me. I'm a burden. All of these beliefs that I created in young childhood is how I created my reality. But I never had the tools. And this, friends, is why I'm having this freaking live. I didn't have the tools to understand why I had these beliefs and where they came from. Okay, so zoom out. I'm going to pause and have a sip of tea. Yes, these conversations need to be had. Guess what? Most people don't want to have them. I have them with my friends and people, and they're like, oh God, I'm just so overwhelmed. I'm like, do you know that this conversation that I'm having with you is actually the gold? The other shit is not important. I'm in a live right now. That's a great question. Can you ask his parent at any point when I'm done with my live? Excuse me, my kids are home. Okay? Hi, oh, thanks. This energy is so much rage. I have been weeping thinking about this child. Let me try to orient myself. Mai is one of my cycle breakers in the group that I lead. Cycle breakers are people who are committed to breaking these cycles. Anyway, I'm having this conversation because I want to give you all a framework of how to look at these situations, okay? So the story I make up is because this 11-year-old completed ending her life, there's going to be a flurry of counselors that are going to be talking to all these kids to manage what happened, right? And they're going to miss the fucking learning opportunity. Okay, so what is the learning opportunity? I'm going to zoom us into another piece of history that's really important in this situation. Okay? Back in the day, when we had enslaved humans, I know it's still happening, but way back, enslaved people from Africa, and slavery is still happening. But what I'm trying to say is way back then, right? Because there's a certain group in America that thinks it's all history and we don't need to study it, okay? There used to be picnics. I'm not doing any trigger warnings because if I have to wake up to find out an 11-year-old is doing this, fuck you all, okay? So at these picnics, white families would bring their whole family picnic basket to go and watch the entertainment. The entertainment was lynching. Can you imagine, just for a second, zooming out, okay? Sandwiches, laughter, fucking acting like all of this was normal, right? Do you know how it lands into a child's body to witness? Mom and dad are smiling and laughing. We have food while we're watching this person who looks like a human being, but apparently isn't because of the color of their skin, right? Dangling like strange fruit from a tree. Do you know the psychological impact on that child's body? To take it in as, oh, apparently this is the way it's supposed to be, right? So before anyone goes and vilifies the bullies in this middle school that relentlessly bullied this child, let's put up a mirror, shall we? How is the leadership guiding the people who energetically are their children, the leadership of our nation that is actually bound to protect us, care for us, provide our essential needs? How are they doing it, right? And so one of the things I want to teach you all right now is what boundaries look like, healthy ones, okay? Because once you see them, you can understand what it feels like in your body. And I'm going to tell you something. No one knows how embodied boundaries feel because we live in a system that does not want you to be empowered. A system that does not want you to see your humanity. And a system sure as fuck does not want you to see the humanity of the other person. Okay? So I like visuals. This is healthy boundaries. These are the same size circles. The heart just represents, this is the goal, okay? Everyone is equal. No matter of your gender or your sexuality or your family choice, like nothing, right? Isn't it like the statement is like, all men are created equal and law, except if you're a woman and except if you're a slave and except if you're Chinese, right? Chinese Exclusion Act. So even though the words said everyone is equal, the behavior, the treatment of people who didn't look a certain pallor, right? They were more like, oh, sweetheart, you don't know what you need to do with your body. I think we need to have a little conversation around your choices, your gender identity, your choice if you want to have kids or not, even if no one gave you the choice if you wanted to have sex as a child, right? So the lived experience is much more like this. This is the generational impact of oppressive systems, okay? Colonizer, colonized. Man, woman. White, of color, okay? Straight, LGBTQ. Cisgender, not. So again, this is the actual nervous system program of what we think we're supposed to be in relationship with each other, okay? And just highlighting this fact of when someone is oppressed this much for this long, they get a little pissed, right? And sometimes there will be lashing out, right? This was my marriage before I exited it, me, because I was like, oh yeah, I can play this game. Let me just minimize my needs and prioritize his and everything's going to be fine. It wasn't. I woke up every morning hating my life, right? So the moment it gets to be too much, the resentment that builds, the victimization that I've learned to tolerate, then becomes like this, right? Which then naturally puts the other person as a victim. Okay? So this means when I've been victimized so long, I'm going to fucking lash out. Because that is the typical energetic exchange. Okay? And the oppressed becomes the oppressor, and the oppressor becomes the victim if we're not careful. And this, my friends, is the reason why we are in this groundhog fucking oppressive cycle that we have been in for millennia. Okay? So for me, and what I'm teaching the people that I work with in groups and privately, is how to be in same size. Okay? Which means if someone is used to taking up this much space, like what I would call like entitlement, right? We know these people. Remember, everyone's inherently worthy in same size, okay? But if someone has grown used to certain comforts, okay, they're going to be used to this. When I right size someone down to this, their natural response to that is they get pissed. They feel victimized. They feel judged. They feel angry, okay? Because they think they're going down to this. But it's not possible for someone who has, okay? Because they think they're going down to this. But it's not possible for someone who has access to, it is not possible for them to go down to this. Holding the entitled, the people in power and privilege to right size, they're going to lash out and they're going to be pissed and they're going to be irritated. And that is really important because their nervous system needs to learn to tolerate not getting all of their wants met. Okay? And I want to make a point right now. Wants are very, very different than needs. Okay? I'm going to do a sidebar. I work with people and they're like, oh, I feel so guilty. I have so much. I have a home. I have food. And look at all these people who don't. And I was like, can we just pause? Why, friends, are you feeling guilty for having your needs met? Everyone on this planet should have a place to stay where they can feel safe and they can get food and they can get shelter and clothing and be around people who celebrate them. Everyone deserves that, okay? So needs are what each of us need to be alive, right? Community, healthcare, housing, nutritious food, education that doesn't brainwash you. These things are all human rights, okay? But the resilience of human beings have also been our downfall. Our resilience and our incredible tolerance for the inequities in life have perpetuated this cycle, okay? So again, let's go back to this person. When they go down in size into right size, they're going to need to practice their nervous system to regulate and go, oh, I guess I didn't need a jet plane. I can still go, okay, learn to tolerate not being entertained 24/7 to whatever fantasy that you might have. Huh, you're going to survive? proud of you. That's great, right? Oh, you can learn to take out the trash without me reminding you? Congratulations. Okay, so this is important, okay? So learning to tolerate the discomfort of not being the center of everyone's psyche. Okay, great. For someone of marginalized identities who have been used to this, okay, going into same size is going to feel like this. Oh my God, I'm sorry, was that okay when I requested that I have time off because my kid's sick? Is that okay? And I'm going to tell you, you going into right size, if you're marginalized, you're not going to be able to do this. It'll feel like it, right? Especially if you're going to do harm, then yes, you are going to do that. But I want to explain something that when you go into right size, same size as the other person who's been entitled for generations, okay? When you go into same size, you are going to feel like I felt unsafe. Zoom out for a second, okay? Why, Judy? If I'm in same size, am I going to feel unsafe? Let's look at history, shall we? Tulsa, Black Wall Street. So they pursued their happiness. They minded their own business. They became ultra successful, and they created Black Wall Street. Claimed their full humanity, their right to exist, their right to be in community where they feel safe, loved, and seen and belonging, right? What's the big deal, Judy? What happened to Black Wall Street? I'm preaching to the choir here on this side of TikTok, but let me tell you, in case some people don't know, it was bombed. It was bombed. Not like those little firecrackers. It was taken down, right? Towns completely covered in water, right? No memories of what life and vibrance lived in this community. It was decimated, okay? If anyone wants to know what that looks like, we don't have to look too far, right? I got so much information watching what was happening in Gaza to understand, oh, this is the story of generations that we get to witness live streamed right now. This is really important information for everyone to look at your own particular ancestry and not get lost in that particular situation. Because if you get lost in someone else's story, you're always going to be bound and disempowered, because you will not have been able to integrate the lessons that you need to alchemize your ancestral trauma. Okay? So back to this. When folks have historically been marginalized, they're used to taking up very little space. I love it. Yes, Miss Brightside, trauma that is not transformed will be transferred 100%. When I take up my right size, okay, which is same size to every other person on this planet, regardless of dictum, okay? Same size, okay? When I take up this size, I'm going to feel unsafe because historically it was unsafe. For a woman to actually show how smart they are, they would be at risk of being raped, fired, burned at the stake. Pick your outcome, right? Let's not internalize, friends, that you're crazy. I'm going to tell you right now, you are not crazy. This is historical. This is epigenetic impact of generational trauma, collective trauma that has been adapted to look like culture. I'm going to tell you who started that. Resmaa Menakem. Trauma therapist, somatic experiencing therapist. He wrote a book, My Grandmother's Hands. This is my North Star, okay? Trauma decontextualized in a person looks like personality. So because I was harmed by my parent, by thinking that I had ruined their life, that trauma decontextualized looked like people pleasing, highly anxious, very quiet and small, invisible, and helpful. Okay? So I could justify my existence on the planet. So that was trauma decontextualized. It looked like personality, okay? Trauma decontextualized in a family looks like family traits. Because my parents sacrificed their entire life to live, the trauma that got decontextualized was very high standards of success, because what happened was, if I sacrificed my life, this is a story I make up for my parents, if she sacrificed her life for me, for the kids, because that was what filial piety required of her, then you bet your fucking dollar that these kids better be successful. So the family trait now looks like, high achieving, right? Perfectionist, happy, yay, right? The last part, trauma decontextualized in a group of people looks like culture. So my family originated in China. And there was a particular moment in time where a government came, promised to take care of everybody, came and upended. Okay, so it's a cultural revolution. Okay, so upended everything, where the people who are at the top, the educated, the wealthy, the landowners, got then put down at the bottom, and those who were at the bottom, the peasants, right, poor, were placed at the top. Conceptually, oh, this makes sense, right? But what happened was, it was still the same oppression, but repackaged, rebranded as something else, right? The ruling class just changed the packaging, right? Made it so that the people that were doing it, executing the orders, didn't have the wherewithal, the nervous system ability to challenge authority, nor the educational level to try to think like critically around what was happening, okay? And so a lot of people died. And so when we have the current administration firing people, ending aid without really thinking it through, my nervous system knows the cost, right? So back in China, the leader at the time had instructed all of the people, right? And these were people that were trained from infancy to be completely loyal to the community, right? Community first, individuals non-existent, right? Collective cultures, which I think is just rebranded for oppression, okay? So the instruction to the people were, melt all of the metals to make bullets, because this is in the middle of war. So these people melted bullets. Cooking instruments, woks, farming, all these things that had metal, they were burnt down to make bullets so they could fight and win the war. What happened was mass starvation, famine. The magnitude has never been clear, because as certain governments do, they like to judge the data, right? They like to, let's make sure that everyone thinks that this is all good, right? I think the numbers are like between 45 and 250 million people died of famine, but it's not clear, right? Similar to what's happening in Palestine, it's not clear how many people were harmed because they're under rubble. It's just too much, right? And for folks who were trying to stand up against this oppression, were harmed by their own people, including in their own family, because what I understand and why I have so much compassion for individuals is I honestly do not know what I would do if faced with the choice of, do I save my kids or do I save yours? I would like to think that I would make the right decision, but there is no right decision. There's a decision that has consequences, right? And when we work within the framework of the ruling class, most of those options do not serve the people. I'm going to say that again. When we work within the framework that was handed to us, force-fed to us, we do not have the breadth of choices at hand, right? Because they're like, hey, this is forced starvation or chosen starvation. Which do you choose? What form of neglect do you like? And really, it's about understanding, oh, this program, what form of neglect do you like? And really, it's about understanding, oh, this program, this forced neglect, right? So rule following, we've learned to tolerate way more than we should have ever tolerated, okay? So when the ruling class says this, liberal or conservative, like those are the two options, right? Male, female, black, white, young. Like you want to just pause and go zoom out and go, are these the only options that we have? The answer is no. The answer is let's look at nature, right? Let's look at nature, how creative the earth can be around equity and inclusion and diversity, right? Biodiversity is the root of health in the gut, on the land, and in our psyche. We are not meant to live the same way. We are not meant to be required to have immigration papers. We are only taught that we needed those things to justify our right to exist. Do you know your right to exist? Are you alive? Then yes, you have a fucking right to exist and you do not need someone's permission. So zooming back to what happened to this young child, 6th grader in Texas, relentless bullying, threats of calling ICE, right? Those kids, and I'm gonna make up a story that I can perceive what they look like because consistently across the board, the harm being done to the global majority is by a very small population that look very similar in a sense of entitlement, okay? That those fair boys might not understand what it means to have consequences of such a dire nature because so much have been tolerated and handed over to them on a platter. Okay? What I know too in my work as a boundary coach is that the people who have had this level of entitlement are completely empty inside. Completely empty inside and have had a relationship with a parent figure who made them feel like this. I would bet all of my money. Granted, I don't have that much, but I would bet all of it that this is the case for those that are causing so much strife and requiring so much money. So much money! Billions? That's not enough. I need more, right? If someone were secure in themselves, they would not need more. Hello? If you're secure in yourself, you would just exist without needing to prove, without needing to hoard, without needing to oppress another human being. So just like these kids who bullied relentlessly, they were kids who did not know that they were lovable, even if they didn't oppress someone else, so they could feel slightly better than them. I have empathy and I have boundaries. So there needs to be accountability. Not to demean those bullies down, but to hold them accountable as a human being that did something that caused someone so much harm that they chose not to continue their life on this side. For those people to see the impact of their actions, right? Salem witch trials allowed the lynchings to happen, murdered Asian railroad workers, pillaged and crossed physical boundaries against women. That understanding of impact is going to cause so much discomfort and grief that they would do something like that. And that is important, because when you can touch on that level of grief and shame, right, they will start to unearth that their heart is there. And that is what we need to do, rather than hold them like this. Because if we vilify those bullies, we go like this. If we vilify the bullies, we go into a position of oppression. And then we're right back at the start of what got us to this mess. So what I'm saying is, actively right size someone to this. It takes great care and effort, and it takes great humanity to do that. So what's going to happen, friends, is when you start to right size yourself and others, your heart's going to break open. You're going to be facing lots of generational grief that needs to be processed. There is no other way through this except for feeling it. But if you get lost in your little life, I just lost my job. These are big, right? But the intensity is actually massive because it's connected to generations and generations of oppression, regardless of what side you are on, the oppressor or the oppressed. And so the moment you can connect this current situation that's up and locate it within your own ancestry and clear it out, see that it happened, understand why it happened, have so much empathy that it happened, you drain it out of your body so you don't unconsciously just carry it on your back and think this is the way to live. This is not the way to live. This is the way to survive. And friends, we are beyond that moment. To survive means that you're going to tolerate the intolerable. I am calling you to live, because this 11-year-old is not alive. Everything I do in my work and in my life is to honor the humanity of all people. This is not an easy road. The cycle breakers who are here know this. The ones who meet with me every week to reconnect to their humanity and commit to cycle breaking and commit to right sizing and commit to being the change that we actually want in the world. This is not easy. And I can guarantee you it's been the most beautiful thing in my life. So I am sending love to this parent whose child is no longer with them on this side. And my hope is that you will wake up, commit to same sizing, commit to seeing each other as your equal, which means you're going to have to downsize some and upsize others, and to walk carefully alongside each other so that we don't feed into the dumpster fire that very insecure men are starting. The path of the cycle breaker is to love with boundaries. It is no longer to tolerate the intolerable. I invite you to be a cycle breaker in your life. If you want to know how, you can look on my thing. There's a book on there too, is like a free book. You go to my YouTube channel, there's like lots of videos on how to do it. If you want to work with me, I have groups. I also work with individuals. I am desperate to get this out there because I am worried that if not enough people wake up and learn how to embody their own boundary and to walk alongside people in equal size, non-violently, respectfully, and with 100% accountability, we are going to repeat the cycle of harm and over again. I'm so glad you got some nuggets, Miss Brightside. I'm glad you crossed this path. I don't think it's synchronicity is like the universe trying to say, hey. The other thing is, my life is so much easier now that I look at things the way that I have explained to you. Like that the intensity is actually a breadcrumb to look in your past to see where the resonance is. So if it's super, super intense, like you want to vomit, go like generations back, okay? If it's intense, like you're heartbroken, go to your family of origin, okay? Most of what we're all dealing with is not this present life that we're in, like in the sense of, I should have eaten a salad. That's not going to be the thing that causes you this much agita, okay? It's going to be family of origin or generational trauma back, and you just want to look, okay? Oh, God. Take good care. Thanks for hanging in there. This was very long, and I was very upset. Miss Brightside is a cycle breaker, and what she's saying is true. Thanks. Thanks, Mai. Mai is a cycle breaker.